Hi, I'm Jackie Tantillo, and this is Should Have Listened to My Mother. My guest is a producer, a writer, and talent. Currently, he is the director of podcasts for Advantage Forbes Books, as well as the host of the podcast, Uncertain Times, Survive and Thrive in Business. For decades, Joe played an integral part in the Scott and Todd Morning Show on WPLJ-FM, one of New York City's iconic morning shows with Scott Shannon and Todd Pettengill. Joe also studied sketch and improv comedy, and he's co-director, writer, and producer of the award-winning horror satire, The Witches of Bushwick. He's got a book out entitled Good Listen. Hello, Joe Pardavila, and welcome to Should Have Listened to My Mother.
Thank you, Jackie. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation. I know we go way back without really going way back.
We do. Right? A couple of doors down from one another. Well, maybe we'll be able to fit some of that in later. But I did read your book, Good Listen, and it's really great. So we're going to talk about your mom first, and then we'll talk about the book because I think it can help a lot of people. Now, I believe in the last page of your book, or close to the very last page, you say, and lastly, my mother Maria, she never cared about what her sons did for a living, only that we were good people. I hope we lived up to her expectations. Is that really truly about your mama?
Yeah. I mean, I was very fortunate because my parents were both immigrants. My mother was from Cuba. My father was from Spain. And they basically were that scrappy, bootstrapping, immigrants that, scraped and clawed to make as much money as they can to put food on the table for their kids and raise them in a way that they had everything they ever wanted. So we were spoiled little idiots, but but my parents were also really cool with what we wanted to do. Like, they really encouraged what we loved. And it's funny because, in preparation of talking to you today, Jackie, I was trying to think of all the things that my mother did that got me here. And one of the things that she did was she encouraged me to just do what I wanted that would make me happy. And in a way, a lot of those encouragements were really weird. For example, when I was a little kid in the mid 80s, remember when HBO was the only place you could watch R-rated movies? Mm-hmm. And so there was an R-rated movie at the time called A Night in Heaven. I'm not sure if you remember this.
No,
but it starred Christopher Atkins, the bushy blonde haired kid from Blue Lagoon, and I don't even remember the film as probably watching the whole thing because I probably watched it as a kid, within when my parents weren't in the room. But in the film, Christopher Atkins plays a student who moonlights as a stripper, and for some reason, I was probably 8 or 9 or 10 years old. I was fascinated. I'm like, that's so cool that this guy can make a living dancing as a stripper. Again, remember context, I was 8, 9. I had no idea what really went into being a stripper, but just the idea of dancing in front of people. And because I was a little bit of a class clown and showman when I was a kid. So I was like, that looks like fun. I could do that. So I went to my mother and I said to her, hey, Mom, I think I want to be a dancer, like the guy in The Night in Heaven. And instead of her being mortified or just shocked, she was like, okay, well, that's good. Well, then you have to train to be a dancer. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll do that. Now, a part of me as a little kid, and I think a lot of kids, is you have no initiative to do anything. So after about a week or two of me trying to physically train and dance, I was like, Mom, I don't think I want to be a dancer.
Way too hard.
It's way too hard. And it's funny, I was always very influenced by films. Another movie from the 80s that did this to me was La Bamba, the story about Richie Valens, the singer from Los Angeles who died in the plane crash with Buddy Holly. And I remember my parents took us to go see the film, and I walked out of the movie theater at the Lowe's in Secaucus, and I said to my mom, I want to play the guitar. That looks awesome. So she's like, great, yeah, cool. Yeah, you could be a guitarist if you want to be a guitarist. So I signed up for guitar lessons at Sweetest Sounds on Ridge Road in Lyndhurst, New Jersey. And I was taught by a guy who looked like John Bon Jovi. It was the late 80s, so it was the curly hair and the ripped jeans and everything like that. And after 2 or 3 classes, I said to my mom, I cannot play the guitar. She's like, okay, that's cool. You'll find something else you love. So I think that's why, when I said in the book and I thanked her, it's like, she just basically wanted us to do what was going to make us happy. And it turned out, luckily, my brother and I were able to have careers in things that we wanted to do. And I always joke with a lot of people that my parents worked hard enough for me and my brother that we never really had to have real jobs. And both of us were very, very fortunate. My brother started with Major League Baseball's website when they first started 20 years ago, and he's still with the company. So he basically watches baseball for a living.
How nice is that?
Yeah. And me, I stumbled into a career in radio. And so it was just because of that encouragement I got from both my parents, but my mother was the more verbal parent. My dad was the, working 15, 18-hour days, coming home, passing out, and just just being the dad to provide for us. But my mom was really the person who just said, hey, do what's going to make you happy.
As a parent, and in hindsight, it's brilliant what she did. Because if she said no, then there would be the resistance from the child as well. So saying yes, she put it in your hands. And if you wanted to pursue it, then you had to go pursue it, right? Or at least be persistent with it. But she was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. And one thing that my mom did, the biggest trick she ever did on me, was she had this ability that when you disappointed her, she showed it. And not in like an evil way, but like if my brother and I ever were out of line or we said something mean to her, she would cry like in front of us. And I just remember that being embedded in my soul, that like I never want to disappoint my mother.
You wish that they would scream at you. So many of my guests have said, oh my gosh, she would say to me, I'm so disappointed in you.
Oh.
And it would just break your heart.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, though, Jackie, my mother never even said those words because she just cried. And to this day, being in my 40s now, the idea of disappointing my mother in any way would just like crush me. And I think that in tandem with her encouragement of doing whatever I want to do was the perfect combination. One was like encouraged me to do whatever I want to make me happy, but at the end of the day, not disappoint her. So yeah, it's. And my mom, this is like the 80s. This is before like, you had parenting podcasts and blogs to read up on stuff. My mom was just doing what she thought was the right thing to do. And sometimes it's as simple as just being like, cool, hon, do whatever you want. And, without overthinking it and reading pages and pages of parenting books.
How old was she when she came with, I assume her family came, or did some family stay in Cuba?
Yeah, so her family fled. She was a refugee, part of the Freedom Flights in 1967. And I believe she was 16, 17 years old when she came over. And so she ended up meeting my father, who's part of, he was like a Spanish like ship mechanic. And he came here to visit his family, and they met here. So she was, I think, 19 when they got married, and her early 20s when she had me and my brother. So she was really, really young.
Did she come with her parents?
Yeah, so it was her brother and two parents. They came over in the Freedom Flights, and they essentially came to New Jersey because they were sponsored. Back in the day, it's sort of like the refugee program is now. You have to have like a U.S. sponsor here to accept you. Sure. And that's why they ended up in New Jersey, because my grandfather ran this bar in Havana, Cuba, and he was like this, and I think this sort of like where I get my sort of like type A personality. He was the guy who knew everybody at the bar, no matter if you came in once or 100 times, and got to meet a lot of Americans which is back in the day, would visit Havana regularly because of, Havana. It's the way it looks now is the way it looked in 1967. It's this just beautiful resort kind of city. And he just hobnobbed and met with people, and then he got sponsored through this gentleman in New Jersey, and that's how sort of my family took root in the Northeast.
And is there still family there in Cuba?
In Cuba, no, because the weird thing and sort of the coincidental thing was my mother's family, her parents, and all their cousins were all from Spain. And I guess in like the 1950s, the cool thing to do for Spaniards is to go to Cuba, because it was just it was essentially like, like what Americans, when they decide to, sow their wild oats, they go to like New York or Los Angeles. Like Spaniards was like, let's go to Havana. This is because they speak the language. And so they're not much of a culture shock. So basically the four of them came from Cuba to New Jersey, but then the rest of her family is from a part of Spain that's actually not too far away from where my father's family is in northern Spain.
Oh, northern Spain. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was born in southern Spain. I'm Italian, but I was born in southern Spain. So it's
okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, my father's family is from Galicia, which I always joke is basically the Jersey Shore of Spain because it's a beach town with nothing else. It's nowhere near Barcelona or Madrid, and so for family vacations, that's where we ended up going year after year. And as a kid, I was like, I'd rather go to Disney World. I'm like, nope, we're going to Spain to visit your grandparents. I'm like, okay,
well,
I guess
that's great.
Now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I got to go to Spain. But as a kid, you're like, all your friends are going to these really cool destinations. They're going to, even if it's something stupid that you think about it now, like Busch Gardens. Like we didn't go to Busch Gardens, we went to Spain. So, but yeah, as a kid, you take all that for granted.
Totally understand. So your mom came here. She went to school. Did she work?
Yeah, so she immediately started working in factories because that's all the work that they could get. And my mother, to describe her, is 4'11". She's shrinking now, tiny little Cuban lady, and she would work in these factory floors and really she told me stories of like really being abused by people with being mean to all the immigrants that would come over. And she just scraped and clawed and then she took some night classes and took secretarial classes and ended up having a career in medical claims as a customer service rep for medical claims she did that for pretty much my entire adult life. She for 20 something years, ended up doing that. And my dad stuck with machinery. He worked on ships and buildings in New York, pretty much his entire life as well. So, circling to my career, I mean, just to give you a little base level, like I had no showbiz connections growing up. It was an immigrant family.
You worked for what you wanted.
That's it. That's all we were. But my brother and I had delusions of grandeur. We're like, we want to do this and that, And my brother went to college to Rutgers to be a journalist, and he studied the journalism program in Rutgers College. But he was smart enough he saw the writing on the wall that print journalism was dying, and he went headfirst into digital journalism, started working with like the local New Jersey papers online, then to New York Times. And that introduced him to working for Major League Baseball's very nascent website. And it's, and his love was baseball. His love was baseball and writing. And he was able to combine that and do that with MLB.
So your mom, did she monitor the schoolwork? And two, was it ever, you have no idea how hard my path was to get here to give you everything. Did she play that card?
No, I will say the only time she ever played the card about working hard is when we were eating. She's one of no scrap of food goes unwasted. So she would always guilt trip us when it came to dinner time. And that was the biggest pain when it came to eating. Like I was a fat little kid. So I'd prefer to go to Burger King and get pizza instead of my mom's like home cooked Spanish meals.
Oh,
but
yum.
I was a jerk as a kid. I really was. I tell my mom almost on a daily basis, I'm so sorry for what a jerk I was. But when it came to homework, I will say my parents were very, I don't want to say cavalier about it, but they just trusted us to do it on our own. Like she never was one to be like, hey, did you I'm trying to remember. I don't think at one point did she say to me or ask like, hey, did you finish your homework today? I just don't think that, but I think that could also have to do with the fact that my brother and I were a bit self-reliant and that we always took care of business and whatever tasks we had. So she never had to take this role of the teacher at home and teach, show us things and have lessons with what we were going through at school. She just wanted to keep an eye on our report card, and as long as we were passing. And right or wrong, she didn't really care if we got straight A's or straight B's or straight C's. She just wanted us to kind of get through school. I mean, she was smart enough to realize that grades didn't matter for what we wanted to do to grow up. So she was like, hey, listen, go to school, learn as much as you can and see what happens. And because she came from a generation of people of like, you went to school as long as your family could afford it or school was available, and then you went and worked.
Or you didn't go to school at all.
Yeah, that's right.
And you still were able to get work and do all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't imagine you cooked any amazing Spanish food with your mom.
No,
based on
no,
what you just told me.
no. My
Sorry.
mom was super old school, Jackie. She basically said, everyone, and it was, it's very like problematic to talk about these but it was like your old school dynamic of the mother was in the kitchen and everyone else kind of like did their own thing while mom cooked and slaved in the kitchen. So, again, something I regret looking back, but that was basically her. She would, go to work, come home, start cooking for all of us. We'd wait for dinner, we'd eat, and then we'd all go and do our own thing while, the adults cleaned up. So we were very spoiled in that regard. But I think we turned out okay. But I think, it was just that very old school mentality of like the mom does all these, mom activities. But it's funny. My mom is very independent and she's very like progressive thinking, but when it came to like home duties, she was like totally down with like, okay, I get this is my role.
Get out of my way.
Yeah.
I got this. It's easier with no one
right, exactly.
gets involved. So when you say forward thinking, in what respect? Can you give me an idea?
Yeah, she was always very liberal in terms of like people's whether it was politically or whether it was socially. She was of the ilk, and this is sort of like how I live my life is like just treat people how you want to be treated. Like I'm all about the golden rule, and that's something that she really instilled in us. And she was in that way. She was, we grew up in Jersey City, and we were like one of the very few like Caucasian, although we were like, I mean, I don't want to say Hispanic because I'm about as white as it gets, but we were like the only like white family like in the neighborhood. So it was, she taught us how like to treat, no matter if they look different or whatever, just treat people like you want to be treated. And I'm very grateful for that because I feel like all of those like little life lessons that were taught to me, whether through osmosis or verbally, it just kind of stuck with me, and it's just part of my DNA for the rest of my life.
Yeah, as you said, she went through a really hard time in those factories. She was mistreated regularly.
Yeah.
So it was in her blood, and that was the best way, I think, for her to teach you guys, whether, like you said, osmosis or verbally. It's just important to be aware, and I believe there's a grandson in the family now?
Yeah, so my wife and I like to joke that we're too selfish to have children. And I was always married to my career. So that the baby that's in our family is my brother's son. Yeah, that's AJ Arturo Jr. And he's basically my mom's pride and joy now. She's retired, so she's essentially like 3-4 days a week, full-time caregiver while my sister-in-law and brother work. And so now she's loving life as a grandma, but no children for me, Jackie.
So tell me, your mom, is she speak Spanish to the baby, your nephew?
Yeah. So they try. I mean, my nephew's only 2 now, but it's funny. My sister-in-law it really embraces our Spanish culture. So she wanted her son to call my mom abuela, which if you speak
grandma.
Spanish, abuela's grandma. But he's only 2. He's not going to say abuela. It's just too hard. So every once in a while, she'll teach him some Spanish words. And my brother and sister-in-law really want their son to learn Spanish. But right now, it's really more about Paw Patrol and, Spider-Man than anything else. I think eventually there'll be more Spanish speaking. But it's funny, Jackie, with our upbringing, my brother and I, we were raised as English as a second language, but as we grew older, my parents then had to start speaking more and more English at their jobs. So the more they were speaking English in their jobs, the more English we were speaking at home. So I was more bilingual as a kid than I am now. I mean, I've forgotten pretty much 75% of the Spanish I've ever learned in my life just because of not only the upbringing I had and where we live, but also the career I ended up having. So
sure, but it changes. And from my experience, because, and this is just my experience, but your ear as a young child, it's the easiest time to learn, to embrace a different culture. So regardless if your nephew at 2 can understand or say the words, it's still the fluidity, the music of the foreign language is what is really great to capture. And with time, if she continues, if you all choose to do that, it makes it easier. It's
Yeah.
just magical because our mom used to sit when we came back from Spain. I was only a month or a couple months old, but she then taught us for years in our kitchen with a little chalkboard. Spanish grammar. And of course, I don't use it ever. Well, I use it more now than I probably did throughout the iterations of when I was taking Spanish lessons and stuff. But it does come back. So, and it's really fun. It's easier to learn as a kid than an adult, I think.
No doubt. And it's like any sort of, it's a skill. And if you do not keep those skills sharp, they will erode. And that's sort of how I am, where we'll watch a lot of like foreign films and foreign TV shows. And with this, when I'm watching like any kind of Spanish speaking ones, I'm pretty good in understanding. I'm sort of at the point where I sometimes question the translation and the subtitles. I'm sure you've done this too, where you're like, wait a minute, that's not really that's not really what I mean. It's a roundabout way of what they said, but not really what they said. So, like I said, I can hold my own well enough.
Oh man, that's great. Good for you. And it comes back. It really does come back. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your mom. Did she wear her emotions on her sleeve? Tell me what she was like. Was she a hugger? Was she a kisser? Was she singing in Spanish or singing around the house? Did your parents talk about amore or, did they love one another openly, or what was it like in your house?
Yeah, so my mother was very huggy. Like, we always hugged and kissed every day. But again, with my family, it seemed like nothing was ever intentionally done or, that was so clear cut. It was almost like it's almost like we sort of just fed off each other and just knew what the other person was doing, unless there was something extreme, like someone being disappointed or someone being mad. So there was always this air in the house of a loving home, but it wasn't so much like we'd be like hugging each other all day long or kissing or talking about our emotions or anything like that. It was just understood that we all loved each other and were so kind. And the one of the things I remember, I think I got my love for like pop culture and even like musicals, because my parents would always like play like movie soundtracks in the house. I still remember like the Grease soundtrack playing in the house, or Saturday Night Fever, and their love of like music and pop culture really permeated with me. And that was like the impact. That was like one of the biggest impacts in terms of my career with my family. Like their love of film and music just really rubbed off on me. And so it was just this house of just, we just really were. It was a very chill house. It was like drama free, but I think that has to do with the fact that me and my brother were kind of like nerdy and didn't really have a big social life. But I think it was just a very cool, very chill environment that we just all loved each other without it being too overtly, over the top in terms of like proclamations of love or anything like that. It was just understood in the home.
Right. It wasn't, you didn't have to proclaim it. It was there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your parents were also, even though they had been here for a number of years before you were born, they were also absorbing the American culture. So that's a big difference right there too. Absolutely.
And they loved it. At the end of the day, my parents, my father passed away, but my mother, she says I'm an American. She barely associates with Cuba because of of what I mentioned earlier. She was born and raised there, but all her family and the culture that she lived was mostly, from Spain. So she identifies as American, love America, love of American pop culture. And to this day, we still talk about things that, either I watched or she watched, and we just enjoy commiserating about, things. We have very different tastes. Like she'll always say, oh, like she's a big fan of like Lifetime movies and like the Virgin.
Great.
Virgin River on Netflix.
Oh my gosh.
All these like really Emily in Paris, like stuff she'll say, oh yeah, I watched Emily in Paris. I know you'll never watch that. I'm like, yeah, you're right, Mom. I will never watch Emily in Paris.
Oh my gosh. She wishes she had a girl in the house. Did she watch the original West Side Story?
It's so funny they said that. So my mother and father, one of their early first dates was to go see the West Side Story, the film, in theaters. So that movie was their bonding sort of moment, or you know how we all have like a bonding pop culture moment. Like West Side Story was theirs, so that soundtrack was always in the house. Whenever it popped up on TV, it stayed on the TV. And my mother was not a huge fan of the remake, although neither was I. The Steven Spielberg remake, and we both had this conversation. And this is one thing we both agreed upon when it came to West Side Story. We both thought it was incredibly well done, well acted, well played. But at the end of the day, what was the point of it? Like, there was really no. There
were actually real Hispanic people playing roles of Hispanic people.
Absolutely. No,
and they were really singing. Natalie Wood
absolutely.
was really singing. So all that said and done, I totally get it. I'm so happy that they did that remake. But for me, I feel the same way that you do. The original just touched me more.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I love having. I love the fact that they recreated it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm telling you, in terms of the production values, it's just a fantastic film. My mother even said, like, it sounded great. Everyone was great, but it was like, why they do it? And like you said, of course, Natalie Wood, obviously a white girl playing a Puerto Rican, not singing one note of this.
So other than that,
get that. Other than that, in terms of like why the films exist, it's weird.
We're going to transition now because I know you've been doing some writing. I want to find out more about what inspired you to write your book, Good Listen. I mean, I know what inspired you because I know your background, but how about you share its objective? Who is this book for? Yeah,
so as I mentioned, I had a long career in radio, and one of the things that I took for granted during the course of my radio career was all these sort of skills I acquired. And come to find out, Jackie, they have a word, they're called soft skills. I didn't even know what that was until I started working in the world of business journalism. But all these skills that I had acquired in radio were skills that I think anybody could use and be useful to anyone, whether it came to wanting to host a podcast or whether it was to just help you in communicating in real life. And when I started working with Advantage Forbes Books, one of my main jobs was to produce podcasts for our authors. But one of the things that wasn't in my job description was to quote unquote coach these people to be podcast hosts. And many of these people never even listened to a podcast, but they decided they wanted to host a podcast. So I started coaching them using all of these skills that I had acquired, and realized, I'm like, wow, all that stuff that I just was secondhand and never really even gave it that much thought is incredibly helpful to these people just starting out doing a podcast. And so I was never one of these people that would be like, I want to write a book one day. I didn't have delusions of like, oh, I should write my life story. But as I started working with more of these authors, I went to the powers that be here and I said, is there something here? Is this a thing? Like what comedians say when they're trying to come up with a bit. Is this a thing? Like, could this be helpful to other people than the folks that we're producing podcasts for? And they're like, yeah, absolutely it is. And so the one thing I wanted to do when I set out to write it was, I didn't want it to be a business book where I didn't want it to be like I didn't want it to be like an instruction manual or something that comes across as very teachy. So I really wanted to do was like share my personal stories in radio and how they can apply to folks today when it comes to, again, doing a podcast, doing a show, even real life communication, because all those skills are so transferable. Like the people that are the best podcast hosts are the best communicators. So think about it, use those communication skills in real life, because we all need to do that. And it's something that we've all gotten really, really bad at over the last years, thanks to this digital amnesia we're all suffering through, where everything has to run through some sort of computer or device. So it's just really something to help people and not even helping, it's almost like to remind them of like the skills that we all have that we just need to, harken back to something we talked about earlier, like me with my Spanish. It's just to sharpen those skills that can make you better at having conversations with just about anybody in your life. It's a great tool. I think it'll be a great tool for anybody. It's not just for podcasters. It is, like you said, for anybody. And I think it's really important. And the most important thing, I think, is listening. We talk about that regularly. And as radio and podcast people, we kind of have to do that a lot, hopefully. Yeah, no,
And
absolutely.
hopefully we do that well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I didn't want it to be like. And if you decide to pick up the book, it's not a how to be a podcaster book, because that's the last thing one of the words that I'm very I have like sort of like this reaction to is the word expert. I feel like everyone throws this word expert around so willy-nilly. Like everyone's either a political expert, a pop culture expert. Like, what makes you an expert? So I never wanted to be like, hey, I'm an expert, listen to what I have to say. It's more of like, hey, I've done this for a long time at a really high level in one of the most competitive markets known to man, radio in New York City. And I think that a lot of these abilities and skills that I've acquired are things that people can find useful in all walks of life.
Agreed. And nicely put.
Thank you.
We have learned a lot. It's been pretty great. My career as well as yours. Joe Pardavila, thank you so much for joining me on Should Have Listened to My Mother.
Thank you, Jackie, and thanks for putting up with me. Yeah, like my mother.
Please give your mom a hug from me.
Absolutely, will do. We live apart now. She's in New Jersey, I'm in Charleston, but I will give her one of those good old-fashioned virtual hugs for you, Jackie.
Good. Hugs are huge. And we will be back next week with another episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother.